Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about the different properties of quadratic functions as we start getting into how to graph quadratic functions. So on page 77 of your notebook, you'll see a lot of vocabulary terms that we're going to go through here. So first of all, a quadratic function is a function that can be written in the standard form of y equals ax squared plus bx squared plus c when a is not equal to 0. We've been working with these for the greater portion of this semester. The simplest quadratic function is f of x equals x squared, which is the same thing as y equals x squared. Remember, f of x is just a fancy way to say y. We call this the quadratic parent function. It's the most basic type of quadratic. Every quadratic function has a U-shaped graph that we call a parabola. So that means it opens either up or down, which we're going to touch on in a minute here. So if the leading coefficient, or a, so the number in front of x squared, if that's positive, that means the parabola opens up. So as I mentioned before, that means the arrows point upward. On the flip side, if the leading coefficient, or the number in front of x squared, is negative, the parabola opens down. That means the arrows point down. Now the vertex is the lowest point of a parabola that opens up. We call that a minimum. But the vertex could also be the highest point of a parabola that opens down, and we call that a maximum. The line that passes through the vertex and divides the parabola into two symmetric parts is called the axis of symmetry. And all that means is that if you're looking at your quadratic, your U shape, it has a vertex. There's an invisible line that runs straight through it. It's a vertical line, and we call that the axis of symmetry, and sometimes we'll call it AOS for short. Now, since it is a line, anytime you state what the axis of symmetry is, you need to say x equals and then the x value of your vertex, because it is a vertical line, so you must write an equation for it. Now, solutions of quadratic functions can also be called the zeros, roots, or x-intercepts. I will use each of these words interchangeably, so it's important for you to know that they all basically mean the same thing. All right, so let's take all of what we just learned and apply it to a quadratic. We have two graphs here, and we need to figure out whether it opens up or down, state the vertex, the roots, the y-intercept, and whether or not it has a max or a min. So first of all, there's supposed to be arrows on these. They just kind of got cut off when we made the notebook. So make sure you put those in there. Since these arrows point up, that means that the graph opens up. Now remember, the vertex is going to be either the lowest or highest point of the graph. In this case, it's the lowest. The vertex is always just an ordered pair. So that means it's x comma y. So in this case, the x value of the vertex is -2, and the y value is -1. So my vertex is -2 comma -1 in parentheses. Now remember that your roots, x-intercepts, zeros, they all mean the same thing. That's the place where the graph touches the x-axis. You could have 2, you could have 1, or you could have none. In this case, there are 2. So my roots are going to be -3 and -1. Okay? The y-intercept is the place where the graph touches the y-axis. So the y-intercept, I'm going to write this one as an ordered pair. That is 0, 3. You could also write your roots as ordered pairs. It would be -3, 0, and -1, 0. I will take either way. And then lastly, we need to state if the vertex is a max or a min. Well, my vertex is a low point on this graph. That means it's a minimum. All right, let's do the same thing for the second question, or the second graph. This time the arrows are pointing down, so that means it opens down. Okay, let's take a look at the vertex. In this case, it's the high point of the graph. And the x is 3, the y is 4, so my vertex is 3, 4. Let's talk about the zeros. That's the place where the graph touches the x-axis. In this case, we have 2 once again. They are 1 and 5. Okay, then we have the y-intercept. That's where the graph touches the y-axis. That's way down here at 0, -5. And then the vertex this time is a high point. That means we have a maximum. And that's it. That's all the different parts of a quadratic that you're going to need to know for this chapter. Now, make sure that you take a look at the quadratic investigation if you're absent today. I will put the key on Canvas for you so you can take a look at the questions that we talked about in class. The investigation just kind of goes through how quadratics move around the graph and what part of the equation makes them do that. And that's important for you to know. So make sure that you pay attention to that as well.